Welcome to Extra Takes, hosted by Northland Church Senior Pastor, Dr. Joshua Laxton. Join us each week as Pastor Josh reveals the rest of the story behind his sermons. We'll discuss how those who follow Christ can live out a biblical vision for the church in our world today.
Well, hello, Northland family and friends. Welcome to another episode of Extra Takes. I'm your co-host, PJ, here with Matt Shiles. And you are not seeing our pretty faces today because we are traveling and we are sitting in a restaurant. So if we get interrupted, hey, we will just roll with it. But thanks so much for tuning in. So Matt, you want to tell people where we are?
Yes. So thanks for being patient with us. I know this episode came out a little late, but that's because we've been traveling and we are in Kigali, Rwanda. So we're here for the week and we will be going to Uganda next. So we're going to dig into kind of why we're here and what we're doing. We're also going to talk about this past weekend because we didn't want to miss the opportunity to share about the third and final week of the faith and technology. Certainly has been thought-provoking and really interesting. So I want to make sure we talk a little bit about that. So as a reminder, this was the TED series, our Faith and Technology, June 28th and June 29th. Let me give a bit of an overview for us. We talked about Ed Stetzer's cultural divide chart. I think that was a great way to start part one. Gave us a biblical definition of technology. He took us through this journey of the Bible, God's people, and technology. Very fascinating. Then you gave us this, how to live as Christians, being tech-wise in a technopoly world. This idea of a technopoly we covered in previous weeks. And then through those, you then gave us this modified version from the TechWise family, 10 TechWise suggestions. So I think it's just really helpful and thought-provoking the way you led us through this series. So I'm excited to not miss this episode of Extra Take. So let's start. We talked about where we are. Let's talk a little bit about what we're doing this week. Why are we here? And by the way, Pastor Gus is here with us too. He elected to stay in the room and maybe take a nap. So good for him. But it's us three on this trip. So why are we in Rwanda and what are we doing this week?
Are you asking me?
Yes.
Well, you're the one who set up the trip.
Yeah.
No, but you were. We are with a partner in Rwanda, and they're actually in 12 different countries, but the partner is African Enterprise, and it's a good friend of mine from years ago. I met at Wheaton College, and we just kind of hit it off, and he's actually a leading voice in ministry in Africa, like you said, in those 12 different countries. And so we are partnering with him and training pastors and church leaders in the nation of Rwanda.
Thank you so much. We are getting our coffee right now. So the joys of doing a live
That's right.
recording.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Appreciate it. Oh, I'm good. So we wanted to do that so that, again, you would just know it is it is Extra Takes.
Live on location.
But we are training about 50 different pastors and church leaders from different denominations. So we have Presbyterians and Anglicans and Assemblies of God and Charismatics and Foursquare and non-denominational churches and Baptist churches. And we're training them in evangelism, mission of God, theology, and then just strategies too to how to be more effective at engaging their communities and cities throughout the nation of Rwanda. So today was our first day. The first day that we were here, though, we spent observing our context. So we went to the Genocide Museum Memorial and talk about a heavy day there, spending a few hours just learning about what happened in '94 from April 7th through July 4th. Actually, I think it was July 4th, 100 days, and over 1 million people were killed, Tutsis and some Hutus But I was 12 years old when that happened, and I do remember seeing images and hearing about that, but just kind of experiencing it the way we did. That was very heavy, but that's a significant part of Rwandan history.
Yeah, it really is. And just seeing how far the country has come in the last 30 years, it's astonishing to me. It doesn't feel like the same country. It is the progress, the reconciliation that they have gone through is just remarkable. It is remarkable. We also got to see some of the Africa Enterprise work, and we got to see a community development project in process, and it was an amazing experience to see church leaders with their congregants, with Africa Enterprise, with the community members that have formed these different groups. And one of them was a savings group, and they're entrepreneurs, and they're making these grocery bags, and they welcomed us into their home to see the process. It was just so very, very encouraging. So we're excited for this partnership with Africa Enterprise, both training and in ways we may be able to support them with other projects and potential future trips. So be on the lookout for that, but certainly be praying for the rest of our time here. And then as we go to Uganda next week to be with our longtime partner, Pastor Robert and Rose, we're just so excited to be there with them and do some additional pastor training.
Awesome.
So let's dig into this week, because I definitely wanted to make sure that we didn't miss talking about the week. So if you can remember, can you describe this week in one word?
Finality. No.
Finality.
It's just no. I think what I would probably say when it comes to the word, well, because it's two parts, I'm going to give you two words. One, examples.
Okay.
And then two, principles. And I haven't really, I have given some principles throughout, but these are really rooted in a particular passage that I really wanted to end the series with. So that's where I would say examples and principles.
Yeah, and I think this probably wouldn't cover the entire sermon. Maybe it would, but tech-wise, it's a hyphenated word, so I think that works. But certainly when I'm thinking about, hey, what am I going to remember about this sermon in 6 months or a year? Certainly that's just, it's a resounding question, especially me with the grip that modern technology has on me and my wife, and then my kids, and raise my young kids. Just this idea of how can we be tech wise, both as we're discipling our kids, but also for ourselves and just the health of us and our family in general. So I think that's probably what would resonate with me. But then I don't know what's one word, but that list of journeying through the Bible. You love to take us through the Bible in creative ways, and it was fun to see that in this example, through people, through technology, weaving through the story of God, but in a unique way. So I really appreciated that. So let's talk about, the other question actually is the big takeaways. So any big takeaways from this past week, or since the series has ended, this series?
Well, I told you not too long ago, when I start a series like this, I know generally where I'm going. Mm-hmm. But throughout the series and the process, I think some big takeaways is looking again at the scientific revolution and how Christians played a huge role in that. So Christian faith played a huge role in the scientific developments that really led to the technologies that we have and even enjoy today.
Yeah.
I loved taking through, I think a big takeaway was the periodic table. I did not expect, that wasn't on my radar when I started this series.
Yeah.
But believe that, this is where I just believe that sermon prep is a way in which the Spirit works. Yeah. And if you're open to the Spirit working, that's where I believe the Spirit will give you revelation and understanding in deeper ways. And I think that was one where I'll never, even look at the raw materials the same way. and just to see where God creates technology. And people like, and I've seen and read like even the human brain of how just complex it is versus like even a computer. So we would consider a computer technology. Why wouldn't we consider a brain technology?
Yeah.
And so just again, what God's doing with even the raw materials and them breathing life into us. And so making us a living, breathing, when I say human tech, that we're not robots. So I don't want you to think that I'm saying that we're robots, but that was just a really profound way of thinking through Genesis 1 and relating it to technology. And then like this past week of looking at, I did not plan on taking us through the journey of Scripture, of looking at all of the ways tech served. But as you develop the series, and I knew what the definition was, but you really tried to find ways to expound on that definition. And so I think by going through just those 12 examples, and again, there are other examples we could have given in terms of technology through the Bible, but how God was glorified and how his mission was advanced and how people experience functionality and flourishing through these tools. And then at the very end, that's what I knew I was going to end on. So I had started the series knowing that I'm going to end in Ephesians 5, because I believe that is such a good passage of how Paul tells us to live as Christians, but to apply it specifically to the realm of technology. I thought would be a good way to really close out the series in a when I say a deep, biblical way that's rooted in a text.
So the periodic table, just today. So what's fun about developing and planning for a trip like this one is we kind of have a structure. Hey, these are the topics that are going to be trained on, but we know that there's always flexibility. So even this morning, as you're, from yesterday, and then as you're listening to Emmanuel, I can see you working away and adding things. And you gave 2 talks today. I think the first talk you added in the periodic table. So that was...
Or just, mentioning
it. You mentioned the periodic table, you didn't show it, but you mentioned it, and then you talked about this idea of the raw materials and air, and I think that's just, it really added to the conversation. But even yesterday when we were in the home, we saw them cutting, we saw technology in work. It was like more primitive technology than we would expect, but it was like a machete that they then heated in coals, and they were cutting through these bags like butter. And that was not a sharp machete at all. And it just cut. And it was, so even just that of, as we go through a series like this, it's hard not to then view the world around you differently, right? You're seeing technology in a new way, and even calling things, that was the big takeaway for me, was the broader view of technology. And then also, I think the tech homework on week 1, the tech inventory list, that was very helpful, because I didn't recognize it, but I think I know the benefits of technology, but I think I had a more negative view of technology in terms of not giving it enough credit in my life. And as I went through the inventory, I was able to recognize, hey, even some of the things that we can maybe misuse with technology are actually good and bad, not just friend or foe, not just foe fully. So that was just helpful to allow me space to think deeper about technology, and I think it continued on throughout the series.
And I don't know. I mean, I know that I've received encouragement throughout the series of how, and it almost seems like it's come from people who enjoy tech or, are in the tech world, and thank you so much, and man, I learned so much. And, I've had a couple people honest, like, I was mad at you the first week because I didn't understand anything. And then the second week, you kind of blew me away with the periodic table. And then I got an email about, some people like, I don't really understand this series, and you're not preaching the Bible. And but then the third week, oh, this was so good. But so all of that to say, I don't there's a part of me, and I don't want to be like, a Debbie Downer or pessimistic about it. But that's actually why I put Ed Stetzer's framework in here because I actually wanted to convict people. Because if you don't start thinking deeply about this, I just don't know how serious you take Jesus. I actually wanted to, basically that's what I was trying to say.
I was wondering that, because I was going to get there with that next question. But yeah, that cultural divide chart, a lot of the times you're using charts to just help illuminate. This was a little bit, and it didn't come across that way, but as you read through it, it's a little more.
Well, yeah, because I just don't think people realize how important this is. And I think that's part of the problem in the American church, is that we don't know how to systematically take something that is very relevant in our life and how do we think biblically about it, where somebody would want, well, go do a scripture and unpack it. Well, you don't see it, like, in some sense, unpacked in a scripture. And the closest thing, and that's why I ended Ephesians 5 the way I did, because the closest thing that you could find to a passage that tells you to think biblically and live in a Christian manner is actually that. Yeah. And at the heart of it, it talks about do not get drunk on wine, which is loose living, but be filled with the Spirit. And that's the closest that you could get to. Wine is a form of technology of taking the raw materials and making something of it. So that's why I wanted to end on. But that's where I don't want people to take series like we do here for granted. You don't get a lot of these series in other places, and to be able to systematically unpack a topic like this and really drill down in what Scripture teaches of how we ought to even apply the faith framework in this. And again, this is where, and I know only a few hundred, which is really good, listen to this, and this is where I would really encourage you to like and share these things. But I don't want us to play, and I've said this before, I said it when Pastor Sim was in town, I don't want us to play church. And I'm not there just to give a cute sermon. That's not why, this one of the things I love about Rwanda and I love about, going overseas and teaching, because people are so hungry. Leaders across the world are so hungry. They want to learn. They want their lives to be changed. And I want that for the church. I want that for just the ordinary, regular, everyday Christian that you don't see coming to church. I just got to go to church, or I'm going to go get a cute little. I'm my calling is to give you things that are transformative, and to truly think deeply in a way that would transform the way you see, even and I wouldn't even call it a small thing, but the little things like technology. Sure. And how do I honor Jesus with them? I want us to start appreciating, and I think some people do, but I would love for more and more people to appreciate the biblical depth in which we have as a church. Yeah, and from Ed Stetzer's chart, I believe he said, if you're a cultural Christian, you'll ignore this teaching. If you're a nominal Christian, you'll be intrigued or interested in this teaching. And if you're a convictional Christian, you'll invite this truth to shape your life. Now, I believe most, if not all, that are listening now are convictional Christians, because I don't think you're searching out and listening to a podcast like this if you're not there. Right. But I think what's helpful is you can kind of reverse engineer it. How do I tell which category I'm in, right, at this point? Maybe it's by what I'm doing with this truth. What am I doing with the preaching? Am I just kind of interested in it? Have I fallen into that category? Or am I allowing it? Even if it's painful to go through the process, am I allowing this truth to shape my life? And you probably could add a fourth category. He didn't have a fourth category, but if you are a Pharisaical Christian, you'll completely reject something like this because it doesn't fit your paradigm of what a sermon should be. Like a Pharisee, a Pharisaical Christian, legalistic. If you're a legalistic Christian, you're going to reject something like this because it's not what you're accustomed to. And so therefore, if it's not what you like, or it's your preference or your style of teaching, or it doesn't give you what you want, you just immediately reject it. Like another sermon series that we're doing in the Julys, we're looking at Inside Out, and somebody it's a Disney movie, I can't believe as opposed to actually looking at what we're trying to do. We're trying to engage culture well. Is that our culture is telling the culture, the larger culture is telling us how we ought to view emotions, how we ought to process emotions, how we ought to keep emotions in check. And so we need to be able to distinguish between what the world says and what the Bible says. And so, but because it's not your typical sermon or your typical series, a legalistic Christian might reject it and go, I'm not going to go to that, I'm not even going to listen to it. So there are cultural Christians, nominal Christians, Pharisaical, legalistic Christians, and then convictional Christians, where there's things that we can learn even though it might not be our preference or our style, or what we would normally like in terms of a preaching series or a message. But that's where, when you go back, and it is why I even wanted to put the technology that Jesus used. He used various techniques to teach biblical truths. And then when you study the New Testament and the early church, you don't even see, there is not a sermon in the New Testament where you see any leader saying, take your Bible and open to Malachi or open to Deuteronomy. Now you have them quoting from various books, but it's almost like they're giving you a lot of times overview or biblical understanding about the Lord, or about some kind of specific element or topic around around. So that's where I'm just wanting people to realize is that please don't be closed-minded about it's only one way to do things. There are so many different ways and techniques to teach the Bible, to teach the Christian faith, to teach how Jesus ought to be the center of our lives, and how that shapes every area of our life. Like in the fall, we're going to be doing a series, How to Lose Your Family in 10 Easy Ways. And while that's a cute little way of saying the series is actually a biblical theology of singleness, marriage, and family. And so it's trying to dive deep into a topic that the Bible does have a lot to say about.
Sure.
And so it's just different ways of trying to teach the truth within Scripture.
That's great. So let's look at this journey through the Bible, God's people, and technology. I'd love to hear if there was, as you were creating this list, if there was any that surprised you or kind of stood out to you. For me, it was the teaching techniques of Jesus. I just wouldn't consider those technologies, right? I think strategies in my mind, techniques were just kind of not in that category. I mean, even week one, my definition expanded, but then still, you share that, and I was surprised again. I'm like, oh, really? So obviously bow, staff, lyre, slingshot, even medicine, I can see all that. So are there any of these on this list that you want to maybe pick one to dig deeper on? Ones that surprised you or ones that intrigued you?
As far as the list of technologies, I don't know if there was any that surprised me, but because I knew what technology, again, because I had taught on this before in terms of the breadth of technology. But that's one of the things that I love about techniques. Whether they're linguistic techniques, like I try to use the English language in a creative way to communicate, to be more functional and flourishing in my communication. So that's a technique.
Like alliteration.
Alliteration. So those are all ways of taking raw materials, the English language, and assembling them together for the functionality and flourishing of people, for the glory of God and the mission.
And we see that with the parables.
So we see that with the parables. And so that's where when you think of technology, think of all of the subsets. You got techniques, you got technicians, you got all of those are forms and in some sense extensions of technology.
Awesome.
And so I think some people would be surprised. I love the law and the systems. He's creating a system of governance. Of you got the Ten Commandments, and you got the civil, the ceremonial laws, and these were what was again God's creating the framework by which the people of God will be governed in the Promised Land. So that's where as a leader, I think through. Now, another one you could have added is when Jethro was telling Moses, you can't do this all on your own. You can't lead on your own.
Oh,
and so in Exodus 18, and so you need to start appointing people. And so what does Moses do? He creates the structure, hundreds and 50s and 10s. That's a technique that is a system that he developed of how to lead better, to create more functionality and flourishing among millions of people, of how to lead them better.
Yeah.
And so that's where, like in leadership, if you are in a classroom, or if you're a coach, or you're leading an organization with tens or hundreds of people, but your people aren't flourishing, you need to actually think through more systems and structures and processes and procedures that you can add to enhance the environment, to create more functionality and flourishing among the employees. So that's technology. Again, those are techniques, those are skill set. And I didn't say this the second week, but the Kaizen, maybe we did, but the Kaizen, it's a system and technique by which, it was created in Japan about how to do manufacturing or operational management better.
Yeah.
So but that's where you see even God creating these things for his people. So that was a big one.
That's awesome.
I love the lyre, because
the lyre, is that how you say it?
In the Tennessee, the redneck way, it's the lyre, whatever. Yeah. But okay, so I want us to think about this. So why do we have multiple, instruments? And we would even have more instruments if people knew how to play different instruments. And then the different kinds and genres of music, those are all techniques, those are all styles.
Like in our worship
service. So those are using tools to glorify God for the edification, for the good of his people as they praise him. But why would we use, here's the thing, why would we use lights? Why would we use sometimes haze? Like this is where I go back to, like when you look at creation and what God, where do you think the fall come from? Where do you think the fall comes from? Is somehow raw materials coming together to create fog. Well, who's the originator, the creator of fog? God is. Okay, so why wouldn't we use? And then when you look at Exodus 19, and they're at Mount Sinai, which mountains were considered temples back then. So this is a place where God's glory and his presence is going to fall. There's earthquakes, so there's this loud noise, and then there's lightning and thunder, and then there's this cloud covering. I mean, like what? Okay, those are all sights and sounds that God is bringing together to make people aware that he's there to change the environment. Okay, so if you look at even the tabernacle and the temple system, and you think about the sights and the sounds and what you would smell and what you would see and smoke and incense, and okay, God is creating or telling his people to create all of these things, to create, when I say an encounter, that the presence of God is there, that this is who he is. And so why wouldn't we do that now as God's people? Yeah. So through music and through, and again, technologies and of lighting and haze, and we're not trying to create an experience, but we're trying to create an encounter where God's here. Yeah. And so that's how, again, throughout biblical history, God has used, when I say natural technology and even human technology, to actually create this encounter that his people would have with him. And so those are just ways of how we're impacted today from a corporate experience of leveraging technology for the glory of God, for the edification of his people as we meet with him.
It's awesome. So let's look at that next section. This was the start of part 2. The majority of it was about how to live as Christians, being tech-wise in a technopoly world. You gave us a bunch of different examples. One that stood out to me, I will seek to discern how technology always overpromises and underdelivers. I won't eat the fruit of tech willy-nilly. I mean, it reminds me of going back to the faith framework. And technology can be so make our life so comfortable or even so alluring in all sorts of different ways that it can lead us away from having Jesus as the center. And technology can have all sorts of opportunities to allow for something else to go in the center. So what are your thoughts on that one or any of the others that you discussed here, the being tech-wise in a technopoly world?
Oh, all of them, or just that one?
Just that one, or any other that you wanted to touch on?
I mean, I don't know if there's. I think a big one is I would protect my eyes and heart as well as others from using technology lustfully. Yeah. So those are things that I really want you to think about what you're putting into your body. You know, what are you reading? What are you viewing through social media? Are there images or videos that you're viewing that you shouldn't be viewing because they're making you lust? And that lust can be sexual lust, but that lust could also be the lust of comparison and greed, that you want to covet what other people have. That's lusting after. Yeah. And so therefore what's happening when you don't protect your eyes and your heart from the consumption of technology is that you're basically exposing how God isn't enough for you.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that's where it leads to that next one, about the one I mentioned about overpromising and under-delivery. I mean, I think it always will, whenever that happens, whether it's through technology or whatever, and if Jesus isn't at the center of your faith, it leaves you empty.
Yeah. So that one's a big one, and especially even with the research in our in our society today, and then discern how technology always overpromises and underdelivers. There was questions that I shared that Neil Postman asked, but in solving this problem, what new problems will this technology create? Social media, one of the things that a writer, her name is, I believe, Shelley Turkle, in her book, Reclaiming Conversations, she kind of talks about how, because of the rise of social media, we as a modern society have lost the ability to communicate as actually humans in physical, when we're physically with people. Yeah. And you see that even with the younger generation, they don't know how to make contact. They, the emotional intelligence isn't there. Yeah. And so so while we had this technological creation of social media, it also created this new problem of now we don't even know how to engage one another. Like, here's another thing that we know, about the rise of technology and virtual digital technology around even pornography, is that what we're seeing is that there is a decline in teen physical, when I say sexual morality, but it's also a decline in teen abortion, or not abortions, teen pregnancies. So what we've done is we've traded, in some sense, we've traded one area, and some people say, well, isn't that better? Well, I don't think any of it's better. So we just don't have the young people actually engaging physically, because they've engaged it virtually and digitally, which again then it's prohibiting them from actually having healthy physical relationships, and even where does sexuality fit within the confines of a human relationship. So we've blurred the lines there.
It's a whole new set of problems. Yeah, in that book you mentioned, Reclaiming Conversation by Shelley Turkle. Fascinating, yeah. So let's look at that next section. So from the list of how to live as Christians, being tech-wise in a technopoly, you wove in this modified version from the tech-wise family, that book, 10 tech-wise suggestions. So I was curious, how did you modify them? Did you change the wording, or change any on the list, or?
Yeah, I mean, I changed the wording. Like Sabbath from devices is a big one. He would say rest 1 hour a day, one day a week and 1 month a year.
Got it.
And I'm like, well, I mean, and I'm not gonna ask you. I'm not even gonna suggest you do anything that I'm not willing to do or know I need to do.
Sure.
You know, so I'm not willing to go there yet.
I see.
You know, and then center your home around things that promote creativity rather than consumption. That's very similar to what he has, but you know, creativity. I wish I could have put activity, because I would say exercising is an activity. It may not be creative, but it is a form of technology.
Sure.
You know, so I feel like, you know, what Andy does in his book, which is I would love for him to update his book, but he's thinking more of the digital tech, and as opposed to the broad understanding of tech.
Yeah.
You know, because I would say if you're doing puzzles, you're taking a form of technology and you're rearranging it, which is, again, it's what his whole thing is be creative, be active, rather than what we typically do is we're in a leisuring way. We're watching TV, so we're consuming. So we're not even doing anything creative other than letting the TV speak to us. Or we're leisurely, we're kind of leisurely going through and scrolling through social media. And so I get that. So that's why I wanted just to kind of modify it in a way there.
I see.
You know, like set adequate boundaries for screen time. Like he doesn't say what's an adequate, but so what he does say, he doesn't. Now again, his kids are older now, but in his book, he talks about how he's very hesitant to give any kid under double digits a screen. And so I'm like, I'm not willing to go there. Now, I don't think your 8-year-old needs a smartphone, you know, to be carrying around. I mean, you know, so, but then your middle school, like some people are asking, well, should I give my middle school a smartphone? If you have adequate boundaries, I don't see a problem with it. But if you don't know how to set adequate boundaries, there would be a problem with it.
Well, and I think what you would also say, because you teach us this all the time, is make sure you think deeply about the positive and the negative consequences. Right.
Well, I remember years ago, Caleb wanted Instagram. So I asked him, well, write a page. And he was like, it was like in 8th grade. Maybe, because we said you had to be at least in high school for you to get like Instagram, and then Snapchat, they wanted that. But I said, all right, so I want you to write me an essay, essay of why you want Instagram and how you would use it.
And
they did. Now I don't know where it is.
Go?
They wrote it.
Yeah.
And then, like, you know,
so he got it. So he wrote it.
He wrote it, and
he was
but part of the balance. But part of that, because I want him to think, why do you really want it?
So it wasn't just you thinking deeply about it, but you were challenging him.
Yeah, and then the boundary, that Joni and I create is she has access to his Instagram. So whatever he posts or whatever he deletes, she can, because she can see it
at any time.
Because it's on her device too.
Got it.
And then part of the boundary is the filtering the time. You know, so you only get again, I can't remember, but 30 minutes. And so if they ran out of that time, then they have to request more time, but we get to say no or yes. So that's set adequate boundaries. And that goes back, number 6 is use technology for a purpose. So what purpose are you wanting to use Instagram? What is the purpose of Snapchat? Why do you want it? You know, again, and I'm not, you know, and I'm not naive to believe that our kids used it solely for holiness purposes.
Right.
But I wanted them to at least, why do you really want to use it? Because I know that even Joni, you know, like our kids, they're still in the process of learning what it means to be human, as we all are, after the image and likeness of Jesus. They're learning what it means for Jesus to be their identity. You know, so I don't expect them, but that's why I wanted them to think about why you really want this. And then the open access of your technology is like, no, like if you, and I said this at the 11 o'clock, and I understand where some teenagers, and this has been, again, this is your parenting style coming in, you know, at it, and I know that our kids haven't necessarily liked it, but we have not been so rigid and legalistic to withhold things from them entirely.
Sure.
So when we give them, we want them to know you will be giving us access, and here's how you're going to be giving us access.
Yeah.
That just not too long ago, we told even Luke, give us your phone right now. So it's just kind of like random check.
Yeah.
Just to see, because again we have access.
Sure.
But yeah, just give it to and just see.
Yeah.
So and again, you may not agree with it, and that's okay. But this is where conviction.
Sure.
And discernment and wisdom plays a role in each family.
Yeah. So one of the things that Kaylee and I do for access to our technology, our phones, we set it up where we have our pictures combined, we basically set up same iCloud account. So at any time we can always see pictures. What's fun about that is when we're traveling, is we'll have pictures on there from nighttime, and then we're 6 hours ahead, right? So I'll see pictures of the girls at the park at the same time that we're at dinner or whatever. So,
right.
That's just kind of like fun as you're looking through the timeline of the pictures, and as I'm looking at finding stuff. I see pictures of the girls pop up, and they don't even have to send them because they just automatically come through. So that's kind of the side benefit to the transparency that we've set up.
And that's part of just the accountability, is that, hey, if you want to use things wisely and well, that's God glorifying, just open yourself up to accountability. Kids need it, spouses need it. If you have an accountability partner, give them access. And there are other things like there's an app called Bark, B-A-R-K.
Okay.
It will kind of like bark at you if you if you're going where you shouldn't be. Or Covenant Eyes. That's another one. So these are all just, again, ways and tools and technology to guard you from technology.
Absolutely. So this has been a great series. Glad we were able to get this conversation in as we're wrapping up this conversation and wrapping up the series. Any final thoughts on takeaways, or just any parting thoughts on this series?
I don't know if I have. I just think deeply about technology, and I love the song we ended with. You can have it all, Lord. And like, if you're going to sing that, you can have it all.
That's not easy to sing.
Well, it's not. If you really think about what that actually means, it's not.
That's what I mean. Yeah.
You can have my relationships, and you can have my culture, my creativity, my technology. You can have my time, my talents, my treasures. You can have it all. And so that's part of where just really trying to drill down on what it means to be human after the image and likeness of Jesus. So this series was a discipleship tool to help people think of how to be human and part of the new human race in the area of technology after the image and likeness of Jesus. That if you really want to image Jesus well, if you want to be more like Jesus well in the area of technology, this is a series for you.
I'm so glad you said that this is a discipleship tool. As you were talking about the things that you were able to implement with your kids, that's exactly what I thought was, man, like these challenges that we have with technology are actually discipleship opportunities, ways that we can guide our kids. And that's where that definition of discipleship that you have is so very helpful. So I hope that might not surprise everybody, but I hope that challenges us just to hear that this series is a discipleship tool.
This, once again, and maybe this would be the parting word, this series once again is an example of how you take biblical teaching, a biblical framework, and you actually practically apply it in a manner that is supposed to equip the believer to be more like Jesus. And to think, how can I be more like Jesus in this area? Whereas, I could give you spiritual principles all day. I could have taken Ephesians 4 or Ephesians 5, and I could have, in some sense, unpacked it and have those same 7 principles, but be more generic. And and I could be more generic, but if I'm not practically applying it of how these biblical truths are supposed to change your life in all areas, then I've failed to do my calling as a pastor to equip the people to understand how Jesus and what he has done is actually transforming your life. And again, I just don't want us to have religious language. I don't want us to have spiritual empty language. I want us to be able to take the deep truths of the Bible and apply them in all realms of life. So that we actually might be the people of God that live differently, that we look at, we handle, we manage, we consume, we create technology way differently than the world does. So this is part of where, all right, so I'll give you one more, again, parting, because I use this as an example of the automated systems today. I have no problem with automated systems today. But if you are a Christian business person that are starting to use automated systems and you're hiring less people, okay, what can you do to help educate people that automated system is taking their job? Like what are the, because that's what Christians do. Like if we're going to create something and that something is going to eliminate a particular position in the world, then we need to be educating the world, okay, what positions should you be going in? Or giving, money for scholarships or helping to do training to equip them to be able to do another position. Like those are things, again, I just don't see for the most part. Again, I know it's not widespread teaching, so I just know that. But that's what we want, and that's what we need to be challenged with.
Thanks for challenging us. As you bring us these series, it allows us to and forces us to recognize the different areas of our life that we may say, well, Lord, I'll give you Sunday, but you can't have my Monday or Tuesday or Wednesday, or I'll give you an hour on Sunday, but I need my phone, I need my Snapchat, I need my social media, I need my technology or whatever the rest of the time. I mean, it challenges us to, back to that song, you can have it all, Lord. Like, well, what does that mean? Well, it actually means us thinking deeply about how technology is ruling our life.
And it's ruling our life, and if we're not careful, it will erode elements of our humanity. So AI is a big one. I mentioned that at the 11 o'clock, but AI, I think, is a supplemental tool. I think you need to learn how to use it wisely. But we know that young people and many other people, like even in some workplaces, they're using it to do their job, and so it's eroding their creativity.
So one last example, you actually used AI this morning during your training. You remember that?
I did. So, and because because obviously there's hundreds of videos of me on the internet, and then I have a website with hundreds of articles, and I've written articles so I have content for it to comb through. So I was asking it, what is the definition that I have used of the church? And then Dr. Josh Laxton, this is what and then it just asked, do you want a specific quote? And I said, yes, please give me a specific quote. And it gave me a specific quote from a sermon that I did.
And you knew it was right.
And so, so again, that's a way, man, I can, in 15 seconds, I was able to get that, so as opposed to me trying to search for all of my documents and find so
that's
so it was pretty cool.
That's a really interesting
and another one, Sam Serto, he was the dean of the business school at Rollins, and he and I, we're just really, really good friends, and he's kind of a mentor of mine, because we like to talk leadership and organizational leadership and stuff. But we're going to do a class with the staff in the fall around how to leverage AI to help you be more effective at leadership.
Oh man!
Of really taking business principles and Bible principles. And so he sent me an email of how he fed AI what does Sam Sturley teach about this, and then what does Dr. Pastor Josh Laxton teach about this, and he sent it to me. It's ridiculous.
Wow.
Of what. Yeah. So we're gonna show people how to leverage AI in a way that doesn't erode your humanity, but how to prompt it to help your humanity.
Awesome.
So, well, Northland family and friends, thank you so much for tuning in to another episode of Extra Takes. And until next time, blessings.
Thanks for listening to Extra Takes. Be sure to follow us on Spotify and Apple Podcasts so you won't miss a single episode.